which is a Shabbos Erev Tisha B'Av's Gemara. We are up to Daf Mem Hey. Says the Mishnah, Hanochrim ha'oivdim esaharim esaglois. You have the Gentiles, the Avodah Zarah, who worship these mountains and hills. Hein mutarin. You cannot place an iser on the mountains and on the hills, as we'll see from our passage. Umasha alei hen asur, but anything which is above them, as we'll see, if it's gold plated or coated with other things, that is separate apart from the mountain, and therefore that can become Avodah Zarah. No, the gold, you put gold on top of it, you cover the gold. There's Avodah Zarah. So the mountain itself cannot become Avodah Zarah, as we'll see from Pasuk Shenemar. And how you know what's on top of the mountain? It says, Leisach my kesef v'zav aleim. You shouldn't desire the gold and silver on the mountain. We just started the Mishnah. So you're bowing out the mountain hill, they cannot become Avodah Zarah. Rabbi Yisrael explains now from a pasuk, and the Gemara will wonder then what's Rabbi Yisrael adding to the Tanakhama. It says in the pasuk you should destroy all the idols when you come into Israel, and it says what you destroy, you should destroy es elahayim alaharim. The gods, their idols above the mountains, below Yehodim, not the gods themselves. Elahayim alaglois. It says in the pasuk you shouldn't destroy their gods on the mountains and on the hills. Below haglois elahayim. If so why is Asher Asr? The pasuk then continues, which is very important for later on. V'tachas kol eitz ranan, and anything which is beneath the green leaf tree. As if to say the tree itself is not us. No, so we know there's a tree called Asheda. Why that tree is us? It's mechubel kark, it's attached to the ground, and you just said tachas kol eitz run underneath. Because there is a human intervention there. Mountains, there's no human intervention. Hills, there's no human intervention. Mem hey yom aleph, in the middle of the Mishnah. But in trees, there is a human intervention, planting it. And anything where there's a human intervention, you can asa. But mountains and hills is part of Hashem's creation, and you cannot asa it. Someone will say maybe because a person cannot asa dover she'ein shalei, something doesn't belong to you, you cannot asa.
And also a tree grows from the mountain.
No. Yeah, so that's called human. Not all tree. We'll soon see. Someone will say that mountains and things have a cheskes heter. Because when it was created, definitely Hashem didn't create it. Every tree, there's no cheskes heter. Rabbi Akiva said. We'll soon see what they basically add. Rabbi Akiva says, "Ani oivin v'adon fenecha." I am going to explain to you, and I'm going to judge before you. Anyway, you found a tall mountain, and you found raised hills, and Eitzrana right next to it is growing some beautiful green trees. You should know the Torah is giving you an indication. When you go into the story, you have to destroy the idols. Where are you going to find them? You should be aware. That's how they treated their areas. That's a site, an Avodah Zarah site, a mountain, a hill, and then some nice green trees. And that means they're treating it nicely. They're making bakabadik. That's what it is. Yeah. There's an interesting machlekes between Rina ben Tam. They will be punished for worshiping the mountain, but the mountain itself is not become Avodah Zarah. We'll see later in argument Gemara, tomorrow's Gemara, if some rocks fell loose from the mountain, what's the status of those rocks once they are separate mountain? Injin Machlekes Rina ben Tam, and actually two Pshat and Rashi. So they're arguing in Pshat and the Zayda and Alta Zayda, and that is it Pshat that the mountain itself does not become Avodah Zarah at all, or the Pshat that the mountain becomes Avodah Zarah, but you don't have to destroy it. Because we'll see later, if you bow down to the mountain, you'll be killed for being an Avodah Zarah. But so some Hashem have a problem. If there's no Avodah Zarah here, if you tell me mountain's not Avodah Zarah at all, so what if you bow down to it and everything else? But there's nothing here. So they want to learn that the mountain is Avodah Zarah. The mountain is Avodah Zarah. And of us, Abba Tabla, when the pasuk says you got to destroy everything that's just all, not the mountain. That's my handiwork. Leave it alone. But it could still be Avodah Zarah. Others will know that the mountain itself does not become Avodah Zarah at all, but because the behavior of you're getting punished for your behavior, not for the chefs itself, but for the gavra, basically. And you're behaving as if it's Avodah Zarah, you'll get killed for that. Anyway, the first thing we need to understand is what in the world is the machlekes Rabbi Yisrael and Tanakhama. He's saying the same thing. All Rabbi Yisrael is doing is supporting him, and we know that that's quite obvious. Rabbi Yisrael is arguing, and even a bigger problem is usually when the second opinion argues, they're always being machmir. taking a step further. What's going on here? So the first Gemara asks, they're saying the same thing. You know what the machlekes is? The coating that's attached to the mountain. As it says, does not have the same status as the mountain. It's separate from the mountain. It's like a tolush. They put some Avodah Zarah. You plate it. No, you cover with gold. You cover with silver. Avodah Zarah. And the Goyim did it, but it's attached to the mountain. And Rabbi Yisrael is makel tzipehar harei kahar. He held that this is considered part of the harim, and therefore it's not Avodah Zarah. The difficulty with this shot is it comes out that Mishnah is actually being more lenient than the Tanna Kamma. That's not the normal way of the structure of a Mishnah. Therefore, we'll have another answer in the Gemara. Interesting. Teisha has a whole discussion. Who was older, Rabbi Yossi Haglili or Rabbi Akiva? The fact that Mishnah's name is mentioned before Rabbi Akiva in our Mishnah sounds like Mishnah was older. Teisha brings other eyes. In fact, Mishnah was younger. So Teisha concludes that Yossi Haglili was a Talmud Chavit of Rabbi Akiva. He was a student, but then he became equal to Rabbi Akiva. Says the Gemara, Rav Sheshes comes a whole different answer, and basically it's based on the idea of Shagula must be stricter than Tanna Kamma. He says as follows: Kuliyam, as far as the mountain is concerned, there's no machlekes. Everyone holds sipehar einekahar. That if you take something that's separate from the mountain and place it on the mountain, attach it, it's not part of the mountain, and therefore it can become Avodah Zarah. No boss. But over here, you know what machlekes is? When it comes to our shade tree, what's on a shade tree? You plant it for a sake of Avodah Zarah, and therefore it becomes Avodah Zarah. Clear. And we learned the Gemara Sukkah about if an esrig or a lulav comes from a shade tree. It has no shiv because you have to burn it. What about an asheda tree that you planted as a normal tree? And while it was growing, you decide, you know what? I changed my mind. I want it to become an Avodah Zarah. There's human intervention here, but at the time of the human intervention, you didn't have a mind of Avodah Zarah. Later on, I did have a mind of Avodah Zarah. But so do we say a tree is different than a mountain? That a mountain, you never have human intervention. Therefore, you can hide with Morgan and say, I want to be Avodah Zarah. Makes no difference. But when it comes to a tree, since initially it was planted by me or by somebody, therefore later on I could turn it into Avodah Zarah. Or do we say that no, once only at the time of planting, but now there's no more human intervention, it grows by itself. You cannot make Avodah Zarah, and that's the machlekes Tanna Kamma and the Yisrael. And it goes as follows: over here, the entire page, Elon should not talk about a tree that was planted lechatchila for as normal, and then later on you decide, you know what, I'm going to turn this into Avodah Zarah. So Avodah, Kamifka, that's machlekes Tanna Kamma. So about Elon. A tree should not just be safe about it. That a tree that you plant as normal, and then later on you decide to make Avodah Zarah. Mutter, it's not Avodah Zarah. The tree you let have a nod from the tree. There's no problem. That's the Tanna Kamma. Rabbi Yisrael is machmir. Rabbi Yisrael is sober. Elon should not ula b'seif avodah asa. If you later on is asa, says the Gemara. Mimai. Where do you see that in the words of Rabbi Yisrael? So I'll tell you where you see it from. Rabbi Yisrael repeats himself, right? He says over here, Eleheim alag boys all that, and then he says, why is an asheda asa? He says because it has a human intervention, and then he says, the chol. I'm giving you a general rule. Anything that has human intervention. What are you adding b'chol? What's he adding? You already told us that a tree can be Avodah Zarah because of human trisas yad. No, so what is it? B'chol sheyez b'trisas yad. What's he adding? Must be there's two levels there. The first one is you planted the tree, you had an Avodah Zarah, and then it goes. I'll take a step further. B'chol sheyez b'trisas. Anywhere where there was a trisas yad, I don't care if at this moment, if this thing came about because of trisas yad, because of human intervention, and you can make Avodah Zarah whenever. Says the Gemara, you want to know because Mikutoni, it says in Mishnah Sefer Mipnei Asheda Asura. And he said, yes, but he says, yeah, Yidei Adam, because a person's human intervention. And then he says, V'chol yes, but Yidei Adam, also, L'choyde V'chol yes, but Yidei Adam, Lasuya Mai. What's he coming to add with that? My love, Lasuya, Elon should not do the Messiah of Avodah. A tree that Chatzuli planted, all right. And then later on, your mind, it's also included in Avodah Zarah. Now the Gemara says that basically he's not the only one who says this opinion. Now, when we say that you can decide in middle of 10 years after the tree was planted, I want to become Avodah Zarah. What part of the tree becomes Avodah Zarah? Only the aftergrowth? Only what grows from now on? Or even it's retrospective that everything that the entire tree becomes. So the Gemara here, the Sugi here, we'll see later from out, the Sugi here learns that it's only the new part. of the trees. The moment you said, I want this tree for Avodah Zarah, anything that grows from now on will be Avodah Zarah. But that which was there already before, you can't turn down Avodah Zarah because that's Mechubal Karka. That's but Elon should not also the Tanya. We have another Tanya who says the same thing. How do we see that? The Tanya we learned obviously you don't even it says the Pasuk Elahayim Alahari. Like you should destroy the god, the Getchkas, the idols above the mountains, right? So we learn from there, but not the Harim themselves. The Loya Harim Elahayim, and not the mountain. If the mountain if they worship the mountain itself, don't tamper with the mountain, don't destroy it because it's nothing, or either we said either because it's nothing or because there's no mitzvah of destroying the mountain. Elahayim alagvois, and we'll have a whole discussion about it later on about why don't the Abish destroy things that going to turn something to Avodah Zarah? Why does the Abish just eliminate them? As we'll see later. Elahayim alagvois, now the mountain, the hill itself was turned to God. Shemeya ani. So therefore, I would know. Atachas kol eitz ranon Elohim, v'ran Elohim. I would know automatically that the same with the tree.
Only didn't love the tree itself.
Sorry?
Not the tree itself. It's what tachas.
Yeah, the tree itself. So therefore, but my problem is, but that's the same way, right? So the tree itself, you don't destroy the tree. Only tachas kol eitz ranon. So that's the question. But you have another pasuk. The Chayda says another pasuk. V'ashereyem tisur from be'ed. You do burn the trees. You do burn the trees. So we have a stila here. Here it says tachas kol eitz ranon, which means the tree itself does not get burnt. But elsewhere it says another pasuk. It says two psukim, which was very important to know. One pasuk it says v'ashareim, and the trees tisur from be'ed. You should burn in the fire. And another pasuk says v'ashareim tigadeyon. You should cut down their trees. Two psukim about destroying v'ashareim, and it's very important because we're going to learn different things from it. So one is to say one of them you should burn them down, and one of them is tigadeyon, that you should cut them down. So it says the murder. So you do burn the tree. No, let's start the pasuk then. If you're going to dash in Elohim alaharim, not the harim, Elohim alagvoy. So what about the tree? How come the tree we burn? It says the tachas kol mishabei same drasha. Tachas kol eitz alavali. So we answer who look at Rabbi Kiva who the asa. That means what's Rabbi Kiva saying? Rabbi Kiva is not only saying Rabbi Kiva ani oivin va'adon v'necha. Rabbi Kiva is saying the pasuk comes communication. In other words, Rabbi Kiva is saying not just that tachas kol eitz ranon is not for drasha. The entire pasuk is not for drasha. The pasuk is not coming and tell you Elohim alaharim, Elohim alagvoy. It's not what the pasuk is telling you at all. This pasuk is telling you where do you know you're going to take the stroll, abatab, and you have to stroll Avodah Zarah. How do you know what's an Avodah Zarah? I'm telling you right now. This is a simon. If you have a harim, a gvois, and eitz ranon, that's awesome. So how do we know then that a mountain is not Avodah Zarah? Not from here, says Rabbi Kiva. You know how you know? Because when the Torah spells out what you should destroy, and it goes out in detail, Mizbecheim and Salamim, doesn't mention mountains and hills. That's how you know you don't destroy mountains and hills. Nothing to do with that pasuk. That pasuk is merely there as a signpost, indication to know where Avodah Zarah is. So he says here, so since you have to burn down shaders, the pasuk tachas kol eitz ranon, is that the whole pasuk is not coming to tell you who's a god and who's not a god. I will explain, but other than I will go in front of you. Call Mokum anyway. The Torah is giving you an indication, the sign, telltale sign. Then you find a Hagavoya and giving us an elevated hill and an eitz ranon, green trees. She has already coming. Okay. Says the Gemara. So what she's saying so far? He's saying so far is that you burn the trees down. You do burn the trees down. And the pasuk tachas kol eitz ranon is not talking about to teach you, but you don't burn a tree. So Rabbanan who learned from tachas kol eitz ranon that you don't burn the tree. Right now we're taking it literally, but soon we're teasing out the pshat here. What do they do? The pasuk you got to burn the tree. Since they learned they dashin tachas kol eitz ranon, but not the tree itself. But another pasuk you do burn the tree down. So he'll tell you the two kinds of trees. One tree you'll burn down, and the tree you won't. Depends when you decided to worship this as an idol. A tree that was planted for Avodah Zarah, that's the pasuk v'ashrayim tisur. That's the pasuk of you got to burn the tree down. This pasuk here, tachas kol Yisrael, is talking about a tree that you plant normally, and then later on you decide to make a Avodah Zarah. That tachas kol Yisrael, the tree not to itself. Nu Rabbi Yossi by Yudanami, Rabbi Yossi with himself. Look, it also needs a. What's he telling you has a problem with the pasuk? Rabbi Yossi, he also needs a pasuk to tell you that you burn the tree down. But Rabbi Yossi Yudanami by Lel Hachi. He also needs to tell you that you burn. If you planted the shaded tree, you burn it down. What's he saying here? Hachinami. Ella Elon Shinato of the Minole. So how you thought that he's telling you the pasuk Asherei Tisra means you burn all trees down, including a tree you planted the chatchila normally. And then in your mind, how do you know? You can only learn the lesser chiddush. If the Torah only told us one pasuk, burn the tree down, you have two choices: to learn only a tree planted for Avodah Zarah, or a tree planted normally. Then you decide to make Avodah Zarah. Of course, you always learn the lesser chiddush. You're going to say it's talking about a tree that was planted for Avodah Zarah. How the world makes you to know to also include a tree that was planted normally, and then later on you decide to turn into Avodah Zarah. You know how he knows? Because there's another pasuk. Nav Kalei, we have two psukim. One pasuk says you should burn the tree down, and the other pasuk of Hashem Tigadeyun, cut them down. So what did Ezehu ate? Now cut them down sounds like only a certain part of the tree is Avodah Zarah. It doesn't say uproot them. If the entire tree is Avodah Zarah, what should the Torah say? Uproot the tree. Here it says Tigadein, cut the top parts off. Which parts? The part that will brew after you made it into Avodah Zarah. So that's why you have two psukim, he says. Eza eight Shigiduya Asa Rikari Mutter. Which tree is it that the tree itself is the trunk of the tree is mutter? Only the new growth is Asa and Havayim Ilan Shanat Avodah. So we have one pasuk. What do you call the tree when you burn it down? According to Yehuda, from the if you planted it for Avodah Zarah, and the other to the kadein is talking about you planted it normally and then you changed your mind, and therefore, so what do you do with tachas kol etzrana? You're burning the trees down. So tachas kol etzrana, and not the tree itself, is nothing to do with Avodah Zarah. Just telling you, the trader's telling you the telltale signs. How do you know where the Avodah Zarah is? Where the green trees are next to the mountain hills. For the mother, well, Asherei and Tishrei could not say Talmud. Rabbi Yehuda in his word, he didn't even bring the pasuk. You're telling me he taka learning the whole din out from the pasuk to Gadayun. But which pasuk did he bring in the Braisa? To Sreifun, and it sounds like from there he learns out that any Asherei tree you burn down. And you're telling me no. You know where he learns out this big chiddush that even if you plant it normally and then later change your mind from Tigadayun. But Rabbi doesn't say that. So the Gemara, he's saying if it would not have said, if it wouldn't have been, if it wouldn't have been the pasuk burn the Asherah down, only pasuk Tigadein, then what would I learn from Tigadein? Only if you plant the Chachil for Avodah Zarah. Now that we have two psukim, I need to learn two different dinim, but I can't learn the same. Why would I repeat it twice? Well, you see, I would have thought it's talking about a tree you planted. Now you have two psukim. Ayatale, yes, so now they have two psukim. So one part, the second part, obviously is adding another layer, another chiddush. And even to Gadeon, that even though it's planted Chatzchila normally, but now that you plant Avodah, it becomes, and now it even makes sense. Tigadeon means cut down the new parts, not the old parts. New, but Rabbanon, what do they do the second passage? What do they need two psukim for? Hi, Bashay Tigadeon, my other way to do it for empty money. What do they do for? Shmuel Levi. Nothing to do with a tree that started out normally and then later on you decided to make a result. No. It's talking about when they came to conquer Israel, the Avish said you have to destroy. For trade that you have a Muhammad to do. So there's two stages. First thing, as soon as you come in, before even you wage a war, cut down the trees. It's a much bigger job to uproot them. So when you uproot them, after the war's over, you have more time, and more menuchas nefesh, then go and uproot every single Avodah Zarah. You have to make a statement that we're not into Avodah Zarah and cut down the tops of the trees. So the Gemara, first, chopping down the Avodah Zarah comes before even conquering Eretz Yisrael. And then the next stage, so in other words, is Gidua. First thing is the Gadeon, you cut them down, and the next, after the war, so we should burn them down. So two stages in what you do. Everyone holds that, but they say that there's only trees that were planted for Avodah Zarah. So why do you need two psukim? Nothing to do with a new din that if you were even later on. It's to do with the conquest. These are all the stages. So the Gemara, how do I know that? Abiyah said, the pasuk, when you touch them as you should destroy them with altars. Vahanach, and leave be v'shabartim and matzroisim menach, and then rest. You should destroy their own matzevus. Vahanach salke datzah seva. What do you leave it? So Vahanach leave it be. What do you leave it be? You have to burn them. It says in the pasuk. So it must be. First, you break it, but don't leave it there. And then after the war, then have a war. And after the war, you go ahead and you do the rest. Now that we're going to how does he know those two stages in the war? Was it not? You know, he learns out. It says in Pasuk, and why is it twice? Two words: destroy to destroy. First, do the initial stage, and then after the war, do the rest. But what do they do with the two words? Even the rest, how far do you have to go? Maybe you have to cut it down to the ground. No. You got to uproot it. You have to remove the Wartschlag. You have to uproot it. But how does he know that? All he knows is two stages because he needs the Abatab for that. How does he know that goes even further? He lives around, says, you should destroy their names. There should be no vestige left of the original, of the past. But you know what they use the pasuk about the Shmom? Literally the names. Change the names. Use derogatory names. Like Kanis Lashem, give them nicknames. The Tanya really have to remove the eliminate the entire tree. Something about the Shmom. Kiva said, we already know that you have to get rid of them from Abatab, that you have to uproot them. In Cain, that's what Chacham holds. You're allowed to give them new names. I would have thought give them nice, praiseworthy names. Why would you think? Why would you think? Why would you think you destroy the Avodah Zarah and give them a nice names? What's that? Make up a new name. In other words, you don't want to have the old name of Avodah Zarah there. Don't call it Poi, call something else. But who said you have to give a derogatory name, a pejorative name? Besides, you have to despise them. Okay, so for example, what do you mean? They called it base galia, let's say the big pile. Karya, I should call it base karya. The big pile, the big heap. Call it a big hole. It's a euphemism. Ain't call the eye for everything. Say ain't kites, the eye for thorns. So the moment finishes the goyim that's the worst of the mountains, the goyim in the hills. Hein mutarin, the mountains themselves are mutar, but they beside the worshippers will get killed for Avodah Zarah. That's the eye they want to bring the mountains to Avodah Zarah. Others say no, the mountains not Avodah Zarah, just the fact that you went through the motions, that's why you're going to get killed. If you worship, let's say, the plants and the vegetables, hein asurin, they are asur, but the they hen besayif. For those who worship them will get a side, but here they're asur because they're not part of the ground. Human intervention, you planted. What are we talking about? Are we talking about Chatchila planted for Avodah Zarah, or was it planted normally and then afterwards started Avodah Zarah? But Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehudi, this follows Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda, the Amar Elon Shenotoil, besides Avodah, Chatchila you planted normally and then you decided to make Avodah Asur. How do you know? Maybe we're talking about you planted the plant for Chatchila for Avodah Zarah and this goes to everybody. But look, goes to everybody. It can't be. We're making a contrast. The mountain remains mutter, and the plants remain also. I mean, they both have to be done the same way. When the mountains were created by Avodah Zarah, of course, not. They made the world. No, later on, you decide to make Avodah Zarah. Same thing with plants. You plant Avodah Zarah, and you want to make Avodah Zarah later, you can't. He had no intention. Okay, so have an easy tonus, everyone.